Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and joining us today is a very special guest. He is a three-time national champion for your Miami Hurricanes. He is a former Pittsburgh Steeler and Jacksonville Jaguar, two-time Pro Bowler, and the author of the book, the autobiography, Fourth Down and Damn, a lineman story, an autobiography of Leon Searcy as told by Mike Brodsky. Coach Searcy, Leon Searcy, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing outstanding. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. I know the fan base is happy to have you on this broadcast, and let's get the show started, Coach Searcy. Now, one of the things I love about talking to former football players is the fact that you guys are amazing storytellers. Over here in Miami, Florida, I'm sure you know him. Joe Rose is an excellent storyteller, and especially being a former Dolphin, and he does a great job, illustrating his time with the Miami Dolphins. As far as your story goes, as according to your book, you had so you were a bad man on that football field. I mean, you were absolutely tough. You're a very recognizable figure as an offensive lineman, but you did have your doubters in the beginning, and your mom, played a very key role in making sure that no one ever, how can I say this, put you down in the process. Would you like to share that story with us, Coach?
Well, you got to remember back in the day when I was playing football that I played street ball. Mm-hmm. All kids picked up street ball, whether it be in the streets, whether it be in the park. And to play organized football was so expensive back then. So, your parents had to literally save money for you to go, because all the equipment and the jersey and all that other kind of stuff, my parents saw fit to spend the money other places, like on bills and food and car notes and stuff like that. So when I told my parents that I finally wanted to play some organized football, they had put the money aside. I got with some of my homeboys. I was a little kid, and I remember walking to the. This is where it was about 5 miles away where the organized football was. So me and some of my friends were laughing and joking, kind of nervous on the way there. Whatever, told some mama jokes to kind of break the. Tried to break the tension that because we had never played organized football before. And then when we finally got there, we were a little intimidated because, we were street kids. And most of these kids that were playing organized football were kids that had money. And we walked into the neighborhood. We were totally intimidated. But we knew one thing. We knew that we knew how to play football. And I just remember being there. And there was a drill that we had to go through. There was a drill where you had to go through the ropes, you had to go through the bags, you had to push something, you had to tug something, you had to leap over something, and then you had to sprint around to the finish. And I did it well, and then some of the kids on the field were like, I like this big kid, I hope you're on my team or whatever. So I'm on the ground, exhausted, tired from running around. I remember this coach grabbed me on the back of my neck, and he was asking me, hey, what are you doing here? And I just looked at him, and he said, you're too big to be in this age group, and you're too young to play with the bigger kids. And he basically told me to take my fat ass home. And that crushed me. You can imagine a 10-year-old kid, a grown man telling you to take your fat ass home, and that crushed me. So I had to make the long walk back home by myself while my friends were able to go there and play football. So I remember coming into the house, and my mom was sitting in the living room, and she said, baby, how was football practice? And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to play football anymore. That's what I said to her. I was done, that my dreams of playing football. So I walked upstairs, and my mom came right up behind me. And she said, what do you mean you don't want to play football anymore? She said, what happened to you? And I started crying, and I didn't want to tell her. And then I told her. I said, Mom, there was a coach there that told me that I was too big and too fat to play football. And right then and there, bro, my mom was like a lioness protecting her cub. She went in her room, got a pocketbook, got her keys, and said, get in the car. And she said, I want you to tell me what coach told you couldn't play football. And we got to the field. I was more nervous for him than anything because my mom didn't play. And she walked right up to him when I pointed him out, and she said, are you the man that told my son that he couldn't play football? And she said, yes, ma'am. He said, she called him out his name, by the way. Mm-hmm. She called him out his name. She said, I want you to remember this. I want you to remember the name Leon Searcy. She said, because you're going to be the dumbass coach that didn't coach him. And she said, one day you're going to see my son on TV. And when I got drafted in 92, in my mind, remembering that, I wonder if that coach remembered my name. Somewhere in my mind, it gave me some pleasure thinking that that guy was probably somewhere sitting there watching and remembering my name. But my mom manifested that at an early age. She put that seed in me that whatever you put your mind to through effort and hard work, you can accomplish.
Yeah, I'm sure that coach is pretty much eating crow. Heck, I think he even ate crow before he found out that when he found out you were a cane, just to say the least, in general. Because I remember you as a kid. I mean, I was like 9 or 10 years old when I first saw you play football. And linemen don't get a lot of credit because you don't get the sacks, you don't get the touchdowns, you don't throw passes, and so on. But without you guys on the field, none of that happens. All right, quarterbacks can't be quarterbacks, running backs can't be running backs either. In perspective. And you were quite the bad man. I will tell you that much. But you had that one coach that really believed in you, especially when you're in high school. His name was Coach Gerke.
Yeah, my Coach Gerke, I love Coach Gerke. Coach Gerke is somewhere now coaching somewhere in Orlando. I mean, he loves the game of football, and he's the reason why I was able to progress as a college football player because I only played 1 year of high school football, and I remember I went out to high school football. I was a third string nose guard. The guy that was playing both ways got hurt. They moved me to right tackle, and I told myself that once I get the right tackle, I said I'm never going to ever be on the bench ever again. And by the end of spring ball, I was starting right tackle. So I was feeling myself. I got 2 leathers from FAMU and South Carolina State. And then my high school coach asked me what I was doing in the summer. I said, I'm not doing anything, coach. I said, I'm going to relax, chill out, whatever. He said, no, you'll come into summer school. Back in those days, the only time you went to summer school was when you ain't had the grades.
I was just saying.
And I had a 3.75. So I had good grades, but my high school coach said, no. Back in those days when your high school coach told you to do something, you did it.
Mhm.
So I got up every morning during the summer. I got up at 7 o'clock in the morning to catch the bus at 8 to get to school by 9. And from 9 to 4 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, all I did was train. And my high school coach never sat out there and watched me. He just put the drills on the field and he left it up to me to do them or don't do them. So he put like 10 drills on the field. He would say, Leon, I want you to do these drills. I want 3 sets of these drills. And after you run these drills, I want 2 sets of stadiums. And after you do the stadiums, I want you to run a half a mile. And he never watched me, but I did the drills every day. I did the cone drills. I did the ladder drills. I did the rope drills. I did the 2-man sled drills. I did the medicine ball. I did the tug of war drills. And then I ran the stadiums, 2 sets of stadiums that I ran 2 laps around the track. And then I'm in the weight room. And then in the weight room, he's got me bent because I never lift weights before. This is my first time lifting weights. So he had me bench press. He had me curling. He doing biceps, triceps, squats, jump, box jumps, all that stuff. And then when I did all that, he would tell me to go in the basketball gym, and he told me to do nothing but rebound. He said, I don't want you to shoot any shots. I want you to move your feet and guard. The only thing you can do is rebound. So for like 6 weeks during the summer, 6 to 8 weeks during the summer, that's all I did. I was in summer school, but that was getting me in shape. I had no idea, but it was getting me in shape. So by the time camp rolled around, I was ready. I was ready. I was like a rocket ready to launch.
Well, obviously, Coach Gerke saw something that the idiot coach over in when you were younger didn't see. But one thing just popped into my head. I just thought about in reference to your parents. You talk about them a lot in the book. And your father was a Black Panther, which instilled a lot of discipline and stuff like that. He grew up very disciplined. And your mom was a school teacher as well. How did growing up in that atmosphere help you throughout high school, college, and also the pros as well?
Well, my father was a Black Panther early in his age. By the time I was born, my dad was he handled all minority cleaning contracts that came through the airport. So he was very diligent in cleaning and administering work and all that kind of stuff. My mom was in education. My mom was a principal. She was a school teacher and a guidance counselor throughout her whole career. So right then and there, they instilled discipline, perseverance, doing the right things, um, being a decent human being, character, believing in yourself, all those traits that it instilled in me at a very young age. My mom would often tell me that when I would ask for information, she would tell me to go read a book. My mom was the type of person I couldn't tell her I was bored because my mom would give me assignments. She would say, "Okay, give me that newspaper." She said, "I want you to read this article. I need a two-page written paper, and I need it typed in double space." I'm like, "Oh my God." Don't ever go tell your mom that you're bored. You never tell my mom that you're bored, because she will find something for you to do. But that was my childhood, man. My parents were my heroes. They molded me and made me the man that I was. And I mean, to this day, I still carry their traits. Um, what they instilled in me at a very young age, I still carry forward today.
Well, I'm really glad your parents had such a great influence in your life and so on. Because as a school teacher, I have seen, what happens when parents aren't as involved or don't care about their kids' future as much as they should. So that's a good thing that your parents, were so wonderfully involved. As you progress as a football player under the stewardship of Coach Gerke, you were hearing offers from FAMU. But as you gain in size, it got more notoriety. There's one particular school that we're not very fond of, and we're glad you didn't go to. Can you please tell us what that school, which was that school?
Florida State was after me. I mean, I think there was legitimately about 4 or 5 schools that were legitimately after me because of my grades. Because I was big, I was physical, and I had grades. So LSU, Florida State, Miami, Florida, and who was the other one? Well, those were the big 4. Those were the ones that were after.
Yeah, but didn't Penn State look at you as well?
Yeah, but I would never go there.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but those were the 4 schools that were looking at me.
What made you decide in Miami?
I mean, oh man, listen, everybody in Miami when I was there, although they weren't champions, they acted like it. I mean, because you got to remember, in 1986, they lost the championship to Penn State, but those guys just knew that they were going to win one. It was just a certain amount of confidence to everybody that was down there, from the coaching staff to the players. I wanted to be around that kind of environment. It had a good vibe about it. It was Miami. I always said this when I went down there. It was the scariest, most exciting thing I ever seen. The city was vibrant. The campus was vibrant. The players had swag. They had character. They had confidence. And I wanted to be around that. Listen, I figured this. Either I was going to be a part of it or I was going to be victims of it. So, I chose to be a part of it. I just knew when I went down there, when you meet the Melvin Braddons, when you meet the Alonzo Highsmiths, the Jerome Browns, the Michael Irvins, you just feel that aura about them. They just had this aura about them, this confidence, this swagger about them that was contagious, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Orlando, and you came down to Miami and so on. And Orlando's grown, the last few years, they're adding to their downtown, adding on to Disney World. The population has also expanded. What was it like when you made your trip down here to Miami?
I knew I was in trouble because listen, I was from Orlando.
Yeah.
I was pretty sheltered when I was before I went to college. I was an L7. That's like a square, L7 square.
Okay.
That was me. I was a
Okay.
square. I ain't gonna lie. So when I went down to Miami, and I remember the first thing that happened is when I jumped in Melvin Braddon's car, and the first thing that he played on his cassette tape was Uncle Luke, and the song was a pretty racy song that I had never heard before. It scared me half to death, but it felt good. It felt good riding with it though. So I'm telling you, Miami was scary and exciting at the same time. That it had you had an adrenaline rush and going with Miami, the vibrance of the city, the confidence of the players. I mean, Miami in the 80s back then, I mean, It was everywhere that you wanted to be, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and the team was very flashy. It really resonated with the city. You got your first national championship as a redshirt freshman in 1987. Yeah, and then in 1988, I personally felt you guys should have won the national championship. We actually discussed that before the podcast even began. And you lost in controversial fashion. I will say that. And in your book, you really do place a vivid picture of what it was like to go to South Bend and getting off that bus. What was it like seeing a T-shirt some Notre Dame clown decided to put, which basically calling you guys convicts?
Well, the first thing I noticed about going to Notre Dame is that they were unchristian-like. All right, they were unCatholics. I had never seen so many middle fingers in my whole entire life. Middle fingers and trash talking and F bombs here and your mother this there. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, y'all are supposed to represent the big guy up top, and that's the last thing they did, especially when we came into town. I mean, they threw things out our bus. They pushed on our bus. So, I mean, but see, I tell you this, though. That's the one game I watched it as a redshirt freshman. But of all the games that I played in, that's the one game I wish I had played in. Catholics versus convicts, no matter what the score, probably will go down in history as one of the top 10 games of all time. And I wasn't there to play it. That's what's so frustrating to me, even though we lost it. Now, listen, we lost it the only reason why we lost it is because I talked to Dave Campbell about this and Butch Davis.
Okay.
He said they called down to Jimmy. And they said, Jimmy, kick the field goal. And Jimmy Johnson said, no, we don't come to South Bend to tie. We come to win. And he said, I don't want to hear what they're saying. He went for two. Because you got to remember this. If he kicks that extra point and we both went out, Miami and Notre Dame are going to split the national title.
Yeah.
They're going to split it. And guess what? If I have to share the national title with Notre Dame with my ring, I probably wouldn't wear it. That's how deep it is.
Yeah, a lot of fans don't remember because they're pretty young, but that used to be a very heated rivalry. I still remember as a kid how much Miami and Notre Dame really couldn't stand each other. And the funny part is that they stopped playing us when we started beating their pants off. And then the early 2000s, they decided to play us again. And after the Coker era, when the Canes were really that competitive, but then they go into the Hard Rock in 2017 and get their butts kicked by the Miami Hurricanes. So I mean, like I said, I mean that was a heated rivalry. And I still remember those games, and yeah, I still can't stand Notre Dame. Now, that year, you guys went on to play in the Cotton Bowl against the University of Texas. They were ranked fourth. Oh, yeah, that's right. The U documentary kind of places a very dramatic emphasis on that game itself. But I want to ask you, as a former player, what was the temperature like in that locker room or prior to game day?
Well, here it is. First of all, in 1990, I remember how pissed off we were because we came into the season, preseason number one. We had no business losing to BYU, all right? And then we damn sure didn't have any business losing to Notre Dame there. But granted, we lost 2 games, which was almost unheard of at Miami. Losing 1 is bad. Losing 2 is almost unheard of. So we went into the game thinking, okay, we got to go to the Cotton Bowl. Never been to the Cotton Bowl before. We get off the plane, and one thing you don't do to inner city kids, black inner city kids, is give them a bag and you put cotton in it. Wrong message you're sending. Every guy, we going through the bag and then there's cotton in the bag. We're like, what the hell? They put cotton in the bag. So those were racial epitones right there before we even get to the stadium. So we get to a couple of the social events, and we read the newspaper, and there's this guy named Stan Thomas, who was offensive lineman for Texas. And if you don't know Russell Maryland is one of the probably top 20 Miami Hurricanes of all time. Russell is, I call him the silent assassin because he's quiet. He doesn't mess with anybody. He's just great. But this guy, Stan Thomas, got in the newspaper talking about when he gets to the game, he's going to walk up to Russell with Maryland and tell him to hand me my Outland trophy. So we said, really? So it started at the dinner that we were at, where we had to share with Texas. and we almost got into a brawl because we were cussing Stan Thomas out, walking by and bumping them, pushing them, all that kind of stuff. Caused a little ruckus. It was cold. It was rainy there. It was just downright disgusting. And we was like, listen, initially we just like, look, we're going to beat them by 20 and take our behinds back to Miami and party. But then Stan Thomas ran his mouth. So when he ran his mouth, we showed our ass. We did in the game. We had 22 penalties. And I think 14 of those penalties were personal fouls.
Yes, I still remember Randall Hill, the 6-shooter.
Yep.
Okay, so this will happen. We're winning the game like 33-3. All right. So we're killing them. So Craig Erickson calls a play. He calls his running play, but Randall Hill runs in the huddle. And Randall Hill says, listen, I don't care what play Coach Erickson just called. I'm about to run a nine route, a go route. And he says, I'm going to get open and you're going to throw me the ball. And we're like, Randall, bro. I said, we're already up by 30. He said, okay. So we're going back and forth with Randall in the huddle because he wants the freaking ball. So Craig's like, okay. He said, you better get open. So what happens? Randall Hill runs that 4-3 speed, runs the 9 route. Craig throws him the touchdown. He runs it because he was complaining because he hadn't gotten the ball the whole game. Okay. That's what he said. I had got a ball all game, you know. He was cussing and fussing about that. So I never seen a player when we're up by 30 argue so much. So he got the ball, ran in the huddle. There's a little 6-shooter, so he was happy.
All right, then you have the 91 season, and then you have the vicious showdown with then number 1 ranked Florida State. Florida State was ranked ahead of you as number 1, and you guys were ranked at number 2. Basically, the winner of this game would have a trip into the national championship game. What was it like going to Doe Campbell Stadium and being a part of Wide Right 1?
Well, let me tell you something that we used to do before the season started. We used to all look at the schedule before the season started, and guys would look at the schedule and say, okay, easy game, stat game. And we had Florida State at Tallahassee, we would always circle that game. We was like, because although we didn't like Florida State, we respected them because they were a mirror image of ourselves.
Okay.
In some respect. So we knew going up to Tallahassee with their number 1, we're number 2. We knew it was going to be a battle. And I think what we were trying to do initially, because we scored first, we pounded them like a year ago for like over 200 yards rushing. So we started the game off with some run plays, some quick hitches, some quick plays to Steve McGuire to get the kind of juices flowing. And we scored early, and then we didn't score again until the fourth quarter. What Florida State were doing to us is that they were running this particular blitz scheme against our offensive line where the running back had to come in front, and he was getting a lot of – we didn't – so make a long story short, the offensive line kind of we ran our own protections in the fourth quarter. We squeezed it and let the running back block the edge rusher. And that's how we won the game, because if we had kept in our same protections, because we had already given up 7 sacks to Geno. So we kind of did our own thing as an offensive line to kind of short the protection so we could go down and ultimately win the game. And a lot of people don't believe this, but I said it in my book. I remember being on the sideline when the kicker for Florida State was out there to kick the 34-yard field goal. And I remember there was just a calmness about me. I said, you know what? You're going to miss this to the right. I just said it. And I remember saying it with ease and confidence. And lo and behold, he missed it to the right. Wide right 1.
Yeah, I still remember that game like it was yesterday. We had a couple Florida State fans in the house, and I remember just trashing them completely. I was about a 10-year-old kid at the time. It was just amazing, what happened. And your run blocking, was absolutely amazing. McGuire and Bennett just ran absolutely nuts. But what was it like blocking Marvin Jones and also blocking Derek Brooks?
Well, Derek Brooks wasn't. They had Marvin Jones and Kirk Carruthers.
Okay.
What was it like blocking Marvin Jones? I mean, he ended up being a very good NFL player as well, not just a good college football player.
Oh, he is. He was. He's one of the hardest hitting linebackers I went up against.
Okay.
Outside of the guys I played against, like Michael Barrows and Jesse Armstead and Darren Smith. So he was in that caliber of linebacker.
Okay.
And I think when you were there to this very day, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Dan Morgan. I'm a huge fan of John Beeson. I'm a huge fan of John Vilma. But I think that trio of Jesse Armstead, Michael Barrow, and Darren Smith are the best linebacking core in the history of the University of Miami. They not only were excellent linebackers in college, but they were also excellent professional football players as well. I mean, they all even made the Pro Bowl at the pro level as well. So as a fan of the Miami Hurricanes, I really enjoyed watching those three play. I mean, I bring up that story because you tell a very vivid picture how difficult it was to score on that defense. I mean, that defense alone averaged about, I believe it was 10 points per game during the season. So it was a very dominant defense. So my question to you is, as a offensive lineman, as a member of the offensive team, what was it like having to practice against those guys? Because I remember Jimmy Johnson used to always say, "Let practice be the toughest game of the week." So that way, when you're playing on Saturdays, it's just a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, I tell these guys to this day, I thank them actually. Um, I thank them because going up against the defense that I went up against molded me into the offensive lineman that I was. I was an attack style offensive lineman. Well, I was an offensive lineman that played like a defensive lineman. I was always on the attack, and I had a hatred for our defense. I really did, because they were good. They would tell you, and they would talk about you, and steal your girl, and not always in that order. And so I was I was I was molded by the fact that every day for 5 years I went up against the best defense in the country every day, and it helped. And we had fights, and we hated each other. We pushed, we shoved, and at the end of the day, we knew that we were making each other better. But I'm the lineman I was as a player because of the defense I went up against every day in practice.
Yes, and I truly believe that team in particular, that defense made you a better offensive lineman. Because, like I said, as a kid, I remember you, and I remember how good you were as a player when you're representing the U. I want to go over into the draft time. When you're getting ready to be drafted. You were a first round pick. You were picked up by the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you were actually almost a Dallas Cowboy. All right. Bill Cowher just came in there and swooped in and picked you up. You told that story, and when I saw you at Books and Books over in Coral Gables, and you also tell that story in your book. Would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was April of 1992. I was invited to New York to go to the draft. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to be that player in the green room that hadn't gotten drafted and with the cameras all on you. And plus, in New York, you can only bring 3 family members, and most of my family was in Orlando, so I wanted to make sure that all my family could enjoy this moment. So we barbecued at the house and everything like that. I remember waking up early in the morning. I couldn't sleep. My dad was up in the kitchen as well. So we decided to take a walk in the neighborhood, walk around the neighborhood I grew up at, because he didn't want me to ever forget where I came from. So by the time we got back to the house, about 2 hours later, there was media all in front of my front yard trying to get an interview with me. And I told them, I'm not going to talk until I get drafted. And then I go into the house, I go down to the den, and I'm just waiting. Now, this is when the draft was at noon. It's not the prime time star power that it is now today at 8 o'clock. So you got drafted at noon back in those days. And I remember about 10 o'clock, I got a phone call, and I knew exactly who it was. It was Coach Johnson. He was like, "Leon," I said, "How you doing, Coach?" He said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling great." He said, "Hey, how you feel like being a Cowboy today?" I said, "Hey, I feel good about it, Coach." He said, "Okay, well, we got the 17 pick in the draft." He said, "Hold tight, you're going to be a Dallas Cowboy." I said, "All right." And then typical Jimmy, he was like, "You're not going to hold out, are you?" I said, "No, I ain't going to hold out, Coach. I ain't going to hold out." He said, "Well, good, because, I got a representative that just landed on Orlando, and he's on his way to your house." So I hung up the phone, and my dad was like, "Who was that?" I said, "I was Coach Johnson." He said, "What did he say?" He said, "I'm going to be a Dallas Cowboy." So my dad was already a Cowboy fan as it is. So about 45 minutes later, this big guy, big burly white guy, comes to my house. He got cowboy hat, boots. He got a jersey on his shoulder, walks in my kitchen, grabs a beer, doesn't even ask. goes downstairs in the den. He's talking with my agent, and they're negotiating my contract. So I'm relaxed. So the draft comes on at noon. They go through a couple of picks. We get to about the 8th pick in the draft. I get another phone call. It's Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher says, "Hey, Leon." I said, "Yes, coach." Said, "Bill Cowher, Pittsburgh Steelers." He said, "We got the 11th pick in the draft, and you're going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler." I said, "Okay, all right, cool." So I'm still a little confused because the Cowboys in back in my den negotiating my contract. So the 9th pick, 10, we get to the 11th pick. The 11th pick in the draft, Pittsburgh Steelers select Leon Searcy. Everybody in the house goes crazy. My mom, my aunties, cousins crying, hugging, and kissing each other and everything like that, celebrating. I see the Cowboy representative. He tears up something, might have been the contract. And the next thing I know, he's about to walk out of my house and he has this jersey. He has a jersey, a Cowboy jersey. It says Searcy 73 on it. So me, I go, I say, hey, man. I said, let me get that jersey. I said, I may not be a Cowboy, but, I like to keep that jersey. He turned around to me and he said, "Look here, son." He said, "You're a Pittsburgh Steeler now." He said, "A Cowboy will never give a Steeler nothing." And he walked out the door. What can you do?
I really like hearing that story. I think it's a great story that you tell. But I have to ask a question. You participated in Super Bowl 30. Being a kid from Maryland, how surreal was that experience for you? Being, a kid from Maryland, moving to Orlando, becoming a Miami Hurricane, being drafted by the Steelers, and now actually playing in a Super Bowl. So what was it like?
It was surreal for me because I remember being a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid sitting in front of the TV watching the Super Bowl, saying to myself, one day I'm going to play in the Super Bowl. Not knowing what I'm saying, but I'm just speaking it into existence. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to play in the Super Bowl one day. I remember as a little kid, I used to turn around and tell my dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to play in the Super Bowl." Like, "Oh, yeah, go ahead. Just watch the game, whatever." No belief whatsoever. And then the walk out there on that field and know that you're playing in the Super Bowl is so gratifying. But I also say the Super Bowl is one of the biggest losses I ever had as a competitor. As exhilarating as it is to go to the Super Bowl, it's it broke my heart when we lost. It did. It broke my heart because that team was good enough to beat the Cowboys. And we didn't have those 2 turnovers by our quarterback. That team was good enough to beat the Cowboys. And we had them on the ropes, especially in the 4th quarter, and to turn the ball over and give them another opportunity to score. I still need therapy for that game. I ain't gonna lie. I still go to a therapist for that game.
Yeah, unfortunately, Neil O'Donnell made Larry Brown a very rich man after that game.
He did make him a very rich man.
Most definitely. I mean, yeah.
And what's funny is I have Dave Campo on my radio show.
Okay.
Dave Campo told me he was scared to put Larry Brown out there with those minutes to go in the game because he thought he was going to get torched.
The interesting thing is that you guys had a very good defense that year. Your defense was absolutely nasty, but at least, we could say that you were able to get into the Super Bowl. A lot of players really don't have that opportunity. I'm speaking as a fan of yours and as also as a fan of the Miami Hurricanes.
Well, the only good thing about losing that Super Bowl is that it was some good Canes on the other side of the field.
That
deserve, the Michael Irvins, the Darren Smiths, the Russell Merlin. So, I mean, if I'm going to lose it, I lose it to a Kane.
Yeah.
Right now, but Russell Maryland is like one of the best defensive linemen, I think, in the history of the Miami Hurricanes. I mean, he has to be at least top three.
Listen, the top. If you want to do the top 5 defensive tackles of all time in Miami, okay, you got to start with Jerome Brown.
Definitely.
And then you got to go Sapp. I would go this order. I would go Jerome Brown. I would go Cortez, then Sapp, then Russell, and then Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, I was about to say you have to include Vince Wilfork in that category. I mean, he was like 6'5" and like 360 pounds, and he could dunk a basketball. I mean, I don't know if you remember, man, but I remember in that Florida State game when Leon White took that handoff and Vince just gobbled him up. You could barely see Leon, you know, in the tackle because Vince just gobbled him up. As well. And Jerome Brown, absolutely. I mean, Jerome Brown was just one of those guys that he talked tough, but he backed up on that football field. I remember when he harassed Brian Bosworth, day before the game, against Oklahoma, and Jerome destroyed the Sooners in that game. Okay, so you leave Pittsburgh and you go to Jacksonville as a free agent, and the Jacksonville Jaguars actually had some pretty good football teams while you were there. You actually still reside in Jacksonville. You have a radio show there and everything. What was it like the transition from the Steelers over to the Jaguars?
Well, initially it was dysfunctional, in my opinion, simply because I had come from the Steelers and Bill Cowher ran things a certain way. I was taken aback from for the thought that Tom Coughlin was, and I love Tom Coughlin, but initially the '96 season, he was treating these young men like boys. He was using military tactics
Okay.
that I wasn't familiar with. Sitting up straight, socks up, can't take a knee, all this other crap. And I was very rebellious my first year there because some of the stuff that he was asking us to do had nothing to do with football, absolutely nothing to do with football. And I would get fined on purpose just to make a point because I played for the Steelers and he treated Bill Cowher and the organization, they treated you like grown men. You were held accountable, you cared for the team, but understanding now, not back when I was there, back then that Tom Coughlin had inherited an expansion team, and a lot of those guys that came from these different clubs, I called it the land of misfit dolls, okay, because they were just guys on teams, and he had to instill that discipline and hard work in the teams for them to. I didn't understand it initially, but once all that discipline uh, uh, equated to winning, and then we bought in. And when all the stuff they was doing, and we started winning. Winning is the cure all for everything.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that next.
It is. It's the cure all for everything.
I asked that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Coach. Go ahead.
No, we initially started the season 4-7. We went on a 5-game run. Morton Anderson misses a field goal. Next thing you know, win the playoffs with the Bills. Their favorite, we beat the Bills on the road. First time the Bills, they were 10-0 at home in the playoffs, and we beat them. Next week, we got the #1 seed in Denver Broncos, Mile High Stadium, John Elway, and all his weapons, and we beat them. And next thing you know, we're an expansion team, 1 game away from the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we made those runs because we had talent, and we bought into what Tom Coughlin was serving.
Yeah, one thing about the NFL that I've noticed is that, when it comes to coaches that are major disciplinarians, it's kind of a hit or miss thing. If you're winning, it's great. If it's not, it's terrible. Just to give you an idea, with Bill Belichick, he's known as a disciplinarian, but players tend to fall in line because he's won so many times. But then you get a guy like Adam Gase, who comes into the Dolphins, and he's just a flat out disaster. He pretty much alienates, Jarvis Landry, and then he pretty much also alienates his 1,000-yard running back, Jay Ajayi, as well. So those are all things that happen, in that type of atmosphere. As far as disciplinarian versus agreeable coaches, what do you prefer as a player? Do you prefer the disciplinarian, the tough guy, or do you prefer someone that's a bit more laid back and friendly?
You want a little bit of both.
Okay.
All right. Players want discipline. Players want to be told when they're not doing right, and to be held accountable for their performance. But you also want to be treated like men. So you got to have a nice little blend of both. To be quite honest with you, and whatever coach can, find that right mixture of discipline and being a player's coach, then you've got something.
Okay, so you leave the Jacksonville Jaguars and you played about 1 season with the Miami Dolphins. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played 1 year with the Ravens, and then my last team was the Dolphins. Yes.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned a player, the politics of the Miami Dolphins, that you felt that it was a little too political with the Fins. And you mentioned a certain player that was a high draft pick, and they wanted him to start at right tackle over you.
Well, here's the thing. When I was with the Dolphins, I was kind of on the downslide of my career, and they had drafted the offensive lineman out of Mississippi, Ole Miss. I think his name was Todd Wade. I think it was Wade, something Wade, Todd Wade, I believe. So my position was right tackle. And then when I go into Dave Wanstead's office, I ask him, hey, Coach, I'm excited, to get back to playing. I've had a couple of years where I was injured. My skill set is ready. He said, well, Leon, before you jump the gun, we're not going to play you at right tackle. I said, what? He said, no, we're going to play you at right guard. He said, we want you to compete with this other guy at right guard. He said, we don't want to put you at right tackle because we got a young, impressionable kid, and the last thing he needs is an all-pro, hovering behind his back. And I said, wow. I said, instead of giving me the opportunity to compete for the right tackle position, you're essentially telling me that I can't compete at right tackle and move me to right guard simply because you're afraid that this right guard, this new kid, couldn't handle the pressure of me being behind him. So that was the politics of me being an older vet on the downside of his career, and a young guy that you drafted pretty high, and you want to see him aspire to greatness instead of putting the best player out on the field. Even the players on the team, they would see him practice and me practice, and the players like, man, put Searcy in there right tackle. He's better, but I ain't say nothing. I just, I kind of roll with I kind of figured it was going to be my last team, and I didn't want to create any ripples.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting development between what happened with the Miami Dolphins. You would think if you drafted a young guy, having yourself at right tackle, you'd be, able to kind of like help out with his development and mentor him and so on. I'm surprised the Miami Dolphins actually went that route. I think it was a bad move, to be honest with you.
Had they told me this, if they said, hey, Leon, we want you to mentor this kid, then that would have been a different story.
Yeah.
But not to tell me that you didn't want me to play right tackle, because if I intimidate the kid, then y'all drafted the wrong kid.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, man. If Todd Wade's ego or his feelings are so fragile and so on, that he has no business playing right tackle for a professional football team. I'm gonna be honest with you. Imagine having to block a guy like JJ Watt and stuff like that, and not having the mental capacity to do so. I mean, no, that definitely wouldn't be a good thing. That wouldn't fly. I think at least it should give me a chance to compete for the position, or at least let you try to compete for the position. I mean, if this guy's again fragile, can't even block Ray Lewis. Imagine blocking Ray. I mean, give me a break. Well, you were featured in the documentary Broke by Billy Corp, and you also go actually very open in your book about your experiences. Well, to be honest with you, you rightfully called them parasites. So I'm just wondering, as far as I'm concerned, if you're talking to a young athlete, potential young athlete, and is about to become a millionaire, what advice would you give that player as far as possibly saying no goes?
Well, I would first and foremost, I would tell him it's not important how much you spend, it's how much you save.
Okay.
Keep your circle small, learn how to say no, invest in yourself, buy land, and pay your taxes. I would. I mean that sincerely, because it's unfortunate that a lot of players don't have the financial literacy that that I should have gotten when I was playing, and that's troubling to me, because these players are getting more money now. I mean, they're getting more money, and you're saying, well, these guys are making all this guaranteed money. There's no way they could go broke. Yes, it is. Because you got a lot of pariahs around you. You've got a lot of people that've got their own interests at hand and not your best interest at hand. They could care less if you have a prominent career as long as you're bringing in money, and as long as they're able to invest and get their hands on it. They can put you in bad ventures. They can put you in bad deals that could squander, a lot of your money. And I've seen it happen. And what's unfortunate about a lot of professional athletes, we all think we're bulletproof. We don't think it's ever going to happen to us until it happens to us. And it's one of the reasons I did the book. It was very therapeutic for me to do the book because it took me a long time to hold myself accountable for the people that I chose to be around. I think once I did that, I was able to relinquish all the self-hate and guilt that I put on myself for not being able to handle money more appropriately when I was playing. So, yeah. And I remember I did an interview about 2 weeks ago with this other podcast, and I told them that the best thing that ever happened to me is when I lost all my money. And the people looked at me like I was crazy. And I told them the reason why is because I was able to attach and associate myself with people. The people that were in it for the game were gone. I couldn't take them out anymore. I couldn't provide them luxuries, cars here, clothes here, house here, trips there, all that kind of stuff. So now I was able to reinvest in myself, believe in myself, and then I started to rise and have momentum after that.
As far as experiences go, based upon what happened in terms of your life history, do you feel that it's important for a student athlete to have more financial literacy classes in college and so on?
No, I think they should have it when they're in high school.
I'm sorry, I meant high school as well. Forgive me, I meant high school as well.
Okay.
I think kids that are like in like 8th and 9th grade, they should know about checking accounts, savings accounts, bonds, IRAs, annuities, life insurance policies, trust funds, real estate. I think that you could do your kid a service if you got the money, buy them a piece of property and let them manage it. Let them know about residual income or that kind of stuff is permanent. It should be taught real early on in their education.
Yeah, because when I was in high school, I really didn't get that. All right, I didn't get that kind of information. I remember telling my students and my parents at open house that I remember in high school when I used to be taught about supply and demand. They gave me like a chart full of coconuts and stuff like that, and they tried to explain that to me and so on, how supply and demand works with the use of coconuts. And I'm like, that's all fine and dandy, but that doesn't teach me how to budget. Doesn't teach me how to buy a car. Doesn't teach me how to buy a house. Doesn't teach me how to save. And so it doesn't teach me about 401ks, retirement plans, IRAs, etc. So I remember before I became a teacher, I used to work at Publix before I also want to be a sports broadcaster. And they first approached me with a 401k. And I'm like, a 401k? I thought a 401k was a scam.
You didn't?
Damn, you're going to do what with my money? Yeah, so now I'm very grateful right now that it's actually state law to teach financial literacy to high school students in general, especially now with college kids in general, that they right now they have NIL deals and they're making money now. So I think it's a good tool for them to have, when they enter college and then also when they get ready for life as well. All right, everyone, that's it for 305 Sports Now. Once again, I'd like to thank offensive lineman, 3-time national champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, Mr. Leon Searcy, for being on the show today. Please do not forget to go out there and purchase his book, Fourth Down and Damn, all right, as well. And please, everybody out there, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to 305 Sports Now. And for everybody out there, I am Will. Stay safe. God bless. See you soon. And go Canes.